Hi, and welcome to Coping During the COVID Crisis. I'm Janet Gross. For the past several months, this pandemic has taken up a lot of our time, a lot of our conversations, and a lot of space in our heads and homes. And with all these things we've had to avoid, some have given up more than big gatherings and close contact, and now may be feeling lost or directionless, wondering where to turn. Dr. Roy Salgado, professor of counseling at the University of Holy Cross, joins us to talk and walk through the concerns and stress of that combination. And it is a big combination.
Right. You know, the past 6 months have been difficult for everyone, and difficult for some more than others. We've all experienced loss of some sort. Some have experienced loss of normalcy, loss of routine, loss of the comforts of what had once been. Others have lost jobs, economic security, and now are dealing with the impact of that. Others have lost their health, have lost loved ones. Some have lost their lives. So there's a lot of grief that people have been contending with over the course of the past 6 months in our local area and around the world. And it's taking its toll on people. People typically find comfort in something outside of themselves, a higher power, God. And there's been loss in that in a certain respect of not being able to commune with believers, people who think the way that you do and believe the way that you do, going to a church service or a synagogue or a mosque. People are just not able to congregate in a way that they once had been able to. And that's just impacting their emotional well-being and their spiritual well-being in a way that perhaps one hadn't expected at the start of this year. And so a lot of existential questions have come up with individuals. I, in my practice, and along with other colleagues, have discussed how some big questions have started to present themselves. What is going on? What is this all about?
What's next? How can we handle what's next? The unknown is often frightening.
And that unknown, coupled with the actual tangible loss of a loved one, or the actual tangible loss of a job or income, all of these different things just get that much more impacted and exacerbated when you have these bigger questions amidst something that is so outside of our control. Individuals don't have answers to what's going on. Governments don't have answers to what's going on. And where do we go from there? So people are asking that question, and people having to find a way to turn to something outside of themselves to seek comfort and solace in such a difficult time.
And a lot of people have given up even the things they were controlling in the past, like prayer time or Bible studies and things that give you comfort and reinforce your faith and connect you with God. And sometimes in a stressful situation at home where you can't be around other people, or you have other things you need to set up or do, you lose that and you give that up, and that gives up more than just those moments.
It's important. We human beings, we're physical beings, we're emotional beings, we're social beings, we're psychological beings, but we're also spiritual beings. One of my favorite quotes, and I don't remember who said this, is we're not human beings who from time to time have a spiritual experience, perhaps, but we're spiritual beings who are having a human experience. And right now, we're having a very difficult human experience globally. And so these questions are coming up, and in counseling sessions, we're not, as counselors, permitted to proselytize or to bring in religion or faith or spirituality on our own accord. That being said, when people do have a faith or a spirituality and they themselves bring it up in a counseling session, and that's something that perhaps can be used to the benefit of the individual, then counselors tap into that and perhaps work with them within the paradigm and framework from which the client operates to intervene with some sort of treatment so that people can rely on their faith. People are having to rely on their faith in a different way than before. Maybe they can't go to a mass or to a church service or a Bible study as they normally had once done it. Perhaps they're doing it through, live stream masses, live stream church services, or Google Meet or Zoom Bible studies, things of that nature. But there's something to be said for communing in brotherhood with one another, something that's not happening or hasn't happened in the same way for a long time. And people are feeling the impact of that.
Sure. I mean, there's something to be said in the Bible about that.
Right.
Don't forsake gathering with each other.
Absolutely.
Because it's important, and God knows that is, our part of our human experience.
Absolutely.
That fellowship we get.
You know, and when people want to talk about these things, and they're wanting to talk about these things, for we not to shy away from it. You know, we live in a world where people shy away from talking about these things. So we're not allowed to talk about that. We can't talk about that, or I shouldn't talk about that. If someone is asking for that, and that's something that can be of benefit for their personal, emotional, spiritual well-being, then we need to listen to what they're saying and see what we can do to help meet that need, you know, to be there for our fellow human being and offer them some comfort in that. We need to offer that hope, because right now, as individuals, perhaps we can't offer it to one another in the way that we normally would. Governments can't offer it to us in the way that we normally would, or to individuals. But seeing how individuals can perhaps seek comfort from something greater than themselves, from God, if you will. Mm-hmm. And it's important to be able to acknowledge that, because these are difficult times, and times that are much more difficult than any counselor or any official can offer to an individual who's in distress or who's grieving.
And you mentioned any counselor, but the University of Holy Cross is offering that free counseling service to anybody.
Absolutely, and to anybody. And I think that's important to note, that the University of Holy Cross, a university founded by the Maronite nuns, is a church. It's a university that is inclusive to all. We have students, we have faculty of all stripes, of all creeds, who are part of the Holy Cross community. And people who seek counseling services also come with all different faiths and creeds and seek services from our counselors in training. They can call the number, talk to the administrative assistant, who triages the call to the clinical director. The clinical director then assigns that to a counselor in training. And we don't proselytize, we don't talk. It's not a religious service. It is a clinical mental health service to all people of all backgrounds, of all worldviews. And if and when someone brings up a big question, an existential question that is bigger and greater than that of mental health, spirituality, the counselor is trained in being able to offer that through the lens of the client, to be able to get comfort through a worldview that makes sense for them. And it is an inclusive way of being able to bring comfort to individuals who are having a difficult time right now.
And that can be so supportive, just the reminder.
Right.
The reminder of spirituality.
Absolutely. And it's okay to be scared, and it is normal to be scared. This is an abnormal situation. You know, we've heard the term new normal. I don't know if that it's, I want to use the term that it's a new normal.
No,
it's an abnormal situation.
Yes, I hope it goes away. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so with this abnormal situation, seeking comfort and guidance from perhaps something greater than ourselves, from God.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about that after this break, because when we come back, we're going to talk about reaching out for comfort and holding on to peace. Stay with us. Welcome back. As we all try to keep it together during the pandemic, we've asked Sister Ann LaCour, Maronites of Holy Cross Congregational Leader, to help us walk through some of the questions that people are asking. Thank you for joining us, Sister Ann.
Good to be here.
So I'm assuming that this is a time where you are talking to a lot of people about keeping it together and keeping your focus right as we go through the stress of all of this.
Yes, I think for we as a congregation, on August 4th, we celebrated 179 years of the Maronites being part of the church. And we were born following the French Revolution. So our sisters, in one way or another, have known crisis at some form or some fashion. And this morning as I prayed, there was a line that came to me from a book called Circle of Grace. And it says, "Blessed are you who bear the light in unbearable times."
Wow.
And it just kind of said to me, okay, God, that's the message for today. Because I think for we who believe, to be able to find the light. If it's just a tiny glimmer, that is what we are being called to at this time. And as I speak to men and women around the globe, especially within the family of Holy Cross, I hear all of us saying in those words, where's the light? But more especially, how do I find the light? And how do I assist other people in finding that light?
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's a mission that we all have, no matter what our faith is, to help others. I mean, that's going to help ourselves.
Right. You know, and as I reflect upon that, such that beautiful sentiment of blessed are you who bear the light in, I guess, this darkness, this unbearable situation. You know, we all have our role, you know, whether you are a religious or a counselor or the grocery store clerk or a physician or nurse in the front lines, we all in our own way can be that light for someone who is experiencing a difficult time right now, which we all are. Our neighbor across the street, we can be that light in this world. We can be the hands and feet of God, if you will, helping one another in this very difficult situation.
Mm-hmm. And while we're all in this situation, I guess, and we've talked about this too, Roy and Sister Ann, being thankful, even though it is dark and it is challenging, but being thankful during this for what we have, for what we have been promised. Those are things that will keep us going and help our light to shine.
Yes, I would share with you that I think one of the messages that we've tried to give to the Marianites around the world and to our associates and all those people who minister with us is that gratitude is a necessary component. Gratitude for what we have had, but gratitude that we know that there will always be something new in the future. And gratitude is a major component. We invite our sisters to do little acts of gratitude, reaching out to people with a note, a phone call, a text message, somebody that you haven't spoken to lately, to just be that little message that says, you are loved, you are cared for. God is right here with you.
And how much you get back for yourself when you do those things.
Right.
Just
you know, and yeah,
joy.
and for the past 6 months, many of us have focused on what we've lost, on what we don't have, and our attention has been brought to that. And to redirect our attention, to be grateful for that which we do have, for the things for which we once have had, and for the things that we currently do have. For all of the challenges that we have, there are still good things going on in our world. I would say the opportunity that we have to be here and to talk to our community about that there's hope.
Right.
That's something for which to be grateful. That we need not to necessarily just simply focus and wallow in our despair and in our challenges, but that there is that light, there is that hope, and that we bring our attention to that and be grateful for that.
Because when we focus on ourselves, we're not feeding anybody except that darkness.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So, Sister, as you try to help people through this, and I know that many people have lost, as Roy and I were talking about, lost loved ones, lost their lives, lost friends. It's also a counseling kind of service to help them see beyond that heavy darkness.
In these past months, I've learned in the solitude that we are all connected, that when we are alone, to reflect on those people who are presently part of our lives, but more especially on those people who have been part of our lives and the gift that they are, but more especially to think about them as connected to us now. I was sharing with somebody early this morning who called, and I said, whenever I see a cardinal outside, if it's a male, I say, okay, Daddy, I know you're right there with me. And recently there were 3 female cardinals eating in one of our bird feeders. And my mom had 2 sisters that were very much part of our lives. And my brothers and I called them the girls. And I said, okay, girls, let's get with it. Help me through this day. to see the light, but more especially to be grateful for all that I have and the little things that I can do each day. So simple ways of connecting, simple ways. I love to sit on a glider and just reflect on what are the many ways in which I have been blessed, and any of us can do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and during these safer at home orders, we have more of an opportunity, we have had more of an opportunity to do those things, to sit and be still in silence, to reflect, to think. You know, we've had a run from one place to another type of world for decades now, and we were forced as a world to stop.
Right.
We came to a screeching halt, and to embrace the silence, to get rid of that noise, and to connect, you know, with our spirit, with God, and to perhaps get some answers in that way. It's in the silence that perhaps we can get some insight as to how we can proceed in our lives, to be, to recognize that for which we can be grateful, for which we hadn't taken the time to be grateful before. And so this is an opportunity, and we need to embrace that and get reconnected with our own spirit, get reconnected with God, perhaps, and be grateful and thankful for what we have. And let's take this opportunity.
You know, I think for so long people have been afraid, and they're still afraid, but fear doesn't equal safety. And I think that's, you know, people get into that rut there, you know, that I'm afraid to do that because I might be. But, you know, caution is safe. Caution is safety, but fear is destructive.
Sure.
And it's not going to advance you in anything you're doing. Sister, I know that help, as you were saying, helping others, you help yourself and you help the world too. So
Yes.
that's a smart thing to do now. I would, you know, I'm sure you're advocating that.
Definitely helping others, and look for the little ways, not the grandiose ways in which we can give or be, but what are the simple things that I can do to reach out to another person? When Roy called me last week, it was like, okay, what do they want, you know? And it was like, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity. And so to look at the calls that we get, to look at the reading something in the paper and writing a note to someone who has lost a loved one. I find myself sending more cards these days than I have in years. Those are simple acts of connecting. And Roy spoke about being afraid of the silence. I think for me, I have tried to embrace the silence. We laugh all the time. Wearing a mask is not something that I like at all. And I find myself saying, I've got to find ways to like this mask, to love this mask. So what are the things that we're afraid of that we can say? The challenge is to like or to love that experience right now.
Yeah. Change your mindset. That's a good advice for these times.
Absolutely.
Sister Ann, thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to, I think one of your fellow sisters will be joining us shortly. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Who to turn to in times of trouble or concern or distress? Many people have an immediate answer to that question. Many do not. So in this time of searching for comfort or direction, there can be a disconnect. Sister Judy Gamilla, Communications Director of Mary Knights of Holy Cross, is joining us now to talk about getting through that and to finding hope. Thanks for joining us, Sister Judy.
Thank you so much.
So and as we talk about hope, some people might be feeling a little bit hopeless in this.
Well, I think it's a matter of perspective, of knowing what exactly is it we're struggling with, whether it's the unemployment or the isolation, and then looking at hope as not something we have, but something that we do, and taking steps to accomplish what we want to work toward. That's how I think too often we think of hope, whether it's one of the theological virtues, faith, hope, and charity. That's good. But what do we do to put hope into action?
And so, if your advice to people who are wondering how do you put hope into action, what do you mean? What process?
Well, I think we have to have a clear realization of what the reality is we're dealing with, that which upsets us the most. So, for example, maybe it's our business is closed and we're not sure when we'll get back and how we're going to deal with that. I recently saw on one of my vast Google researches that in talking about superheroes, the thing they all had in common, think of your favorite superhero, they all knew how to reframe challenges into opportunities. I think active hope gives us the way to look at what we're dealing with and then try to go, what is it we would prefer? How would we want to work toward whatever that would be? And then take the steps to get there.
Wow, that also goes to a good attitude during this as
Right.
well. So you know, you're not wallowing in self and despair.
Right.
You are taking steps, the next step.
You know, and there are many individuals who, in a very difficult and distressing situation, the inclination is to go towards that wallowing in that dark, depressive state.
Sure.
And in mental health and in counseling, counselors implement strategies that help restructure cognitions, help restructure ways of thinking. And so that active hope that Sister Judy speaks of is engaging in a way and changing the script in your mind to think differently about a situation, to restructure your thoughts, that perspective, where you take that challenge and turn it into an opportunity, which is a wonderful thing. I really do appreciate how she's able to talk about flipping the script, if you will.
I like that too, because you do think if you're instantly that superhero, you know what, they didn't like go home and be depressed.
Right.
You know? They
Right.
move forward. I'm
They
gonna be a
stopped the
superhero.
train in its tracks.
Hello. Yeah, they save the person. And you know, we have the opportunity to do that. Sister, you're right. We can reach out to people who might not be at that step where they can reach out. But we can do that and improve our own situation while helping them.
And keeping a sense of humor.
Yeah.
That is paramount. Learning to laugh at ourselves and situations that weren't maybe what we expected them to be. I certainly believe in a sense of humor. I came across something. I love music, and I all kinds of music. And I came across an old Anne Murray song called "The Other Side." And I just love the way, in talking about those superheroes who could reframe challenges into opportunities. There's a line in the song, I jotted it down. The other side of doubt is faith. I'm not singing it to you, be grateful. The other side of faith is strength. The journey may seem endless and the road is rough, but the other side of fear is love. Look up the song, Anne Murray, The Other Side.
I like that.
Yeah, that's great.
Good. And I'm sorry you weren't singing it to us. I would have enjoyed that as well.
You know,
I'm
and
not sure.
the opposite side of fear is love. You know, I think that's a very important thing, because right now people have been struck with so much fear that, you know, hope, offering up that hope to people who are experiencing fear in whatever way that we offer it to them, counselor to client, neighbor to neighbor, that we're doing that through acts of love. You know, those letters that Sister Ann had talked about, that she writes little cards to people. She's been writing that. Being joyful and having a sense of humor, as Sister Judy is referencing. These are all ways that we are showing love to people and kind of eliminating some of the fear
Right.
that people are experiencing in any given moment.
And if you're going to change your mindset, you know, be joyful always. It's a command.
Right.
You know, it's not be joyful always when things are going your way or well. It is always.
So this is a good time to practice that.
It is, and you know, we practice our faith, and that's certainly something that I know Sister Judy practices.
Well, I'll tell you this. I don't think joy is a single occasion. I really believe particularly for a spiritual person, joy is our general attitude, a sense of gratefulness. Not because I had a great birthday party or because I won the lottery, but joy is it's like a stained glass window, and myriads of colors come through that window. And that's what joy does. It affects all of our life and not just isolated incidents. And I think that's what gives us a good sense of humor and that sense of perspective.
Sister Judy, thank you so much for your joyful attitude and for your advice and your counseling that you just gave us today. And we really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us.
And I add one thing.
Sure.
I'd love to recommend a book. It's called Sanctuary, Creating a Space for Grace by Terry Hershey. And I think this pandemic has given all of us the opportunity to experience sanctuary and to create a space for grace. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Roy, I know that you have we have about 30 seconds left. If you can give us your tips.
Absolutely. You know, and to talk about how we can create that space for ourselves, it's important that we take time for ourselves, you know, to eliminate the noise from our lives and to embrace that silence that Sister Ann had talked about earlier. And to pray and meditate. You know, I, for one, in my prayer and meditation, I include it in other areas of my life too. I've included it with the steps of hand washing. And so when you wash your hands, I say the Lord's Prayer as opposed to the happy birthday song. So perhaps doing something like that. Go for walks, connect with God, and maintain hope at all times. We need it now more than ever.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Roy Salgado, and all your colleagues at the University of Holy Cross. And we thank you for watching. We want to help as we are all coping during this COVID crisis.